So, welcome. And once again, sorry for all the shenanigans. I'm just going to leave it like that since I know that that will work for me. So, actually, I'll put that over there. So just a reminder, and I can see that some of you are getting involved, so that's fantastic. So someone wins a free session with me. I'll probably announce it maybe Saturday. I'm actually on a course tomorrow. What's today? Is today Wednesday? Yeah. So I'm gone Friday to Monday. So somewhere over the weekend, I'll have a look and I'll do some little tally ups and see. But anyone who wants to be in the draw for a session with me, the most engaged person is the one who's going to win. So it's about creating the video introduction of yourself on Kickstarting Kinesiology, popping up the favorite thing you learned each day, hashtag day 1, hashtag day 2, hashtag day 3, so I can go check them out. And then using a technique on yourself. How does it feel? Do you notice any different? How did it feel doing it? Do it on someone else. How does that feel? Isn't it scary doing stuff the first time on someone else? It's scary. My last guy, he's been using a particular product for a while, and he got a few freebies when he got his first pack, and he actually gave it to someone who'd had this shoulder pain, and he said someone totally out of the blue, and I shared information with him and gave him a little book. I said, what little book? So now I need to go find out what this little book is that he gave him. Anyway, so it's sort of interesting, how we feel about doing stuff. Because as I've said before, and as I will keep saying, we need healers on the planet. We need people with good chunky techniques that make difference in people's lives. So, and interacting with our tribe on Kickstarting Kinesiology, so making sure that we're sort of doing all of that stuff. And anyone who books a discovery call as well is in there with the competition. So, and anyway, this will be in this video, so it means that if anyone's trying to contact me, these are all my my groups and my details to get onto me. So I thought I'd just whack it all in there. And of course, some of you have been following me for a while, but man, I've been doing this a long time. And I'm so glad I started with naturopathy, because my joke is, if I hadn't done naturopathy first, I doubt I would have done it after I'd learnt kinesiology. Because for me, kinesiology is so much fun. And I love teaching it, and I love that, seeing that look on someone's face when they go, oh, that's so cool. So anyway, that is me. And of course, I've been teaching kinesiology for over 20 years as well. The first thing I started teaching was Touch for Health. And then I started teaching heart healing, and then I started teaching biokinetics, and then I sort of started going down in this hierarchy. And what I really wanted to teach was the stuff that I use all day, every day. And once again, that's why I've gone down the track I've gone down, because just about everyone who sees my work from around the world goes, it's not quite LEAP, it's not quite NOT, it's not quite Touch for Health. What is it? I go, well, it's sort of my fusion. So it's my fusion work that I've been putting together for a long time. So the last few days, haven't we gone through a few things already? So I was sort of making a note of it, and I thought of another one at 3 o'clock this morning, and I added it onto the list. And I think this is what we have covered so far this week. So if there's anything else, let me know, and I'll put a few more things on there. But basically, like yesterday, we really started talking through the Moro reflex and palmar reflex. So I've got some great slides a little bit below about those reflexes, because if our primitive reflexes are jammed, that can affect every portion of our life. So that's a really huge thing to just know about. So when you start seeing those reflexes in people, and I've actually got a little, yes? Sorry, hello?
Hi, Vanna, you can't. Gigi's too sick, okay? It's going to be hard enough if I end up in hospital tomorrow. Yeah. Because she has a croupy cough, okay?
Oh, darling. Croupy coughs. They're no fun. I'm sure you're already doing it, but using the gel on the chest is amazing for Teddy when he gets his little croupy asthma cough. It just gets in there and penetrates and increases that blood supply. But yeah, so these are the little things. So the Moro reflex, because it's connected to so much stuff to do with the way the brain is activated, to do with the brain is setting up our survival patterns, to do with our brain and how it affects our nervous system and our immune system, and so much more. So yeah, so I've got a few extra little bits and pieces to share on the primitive reflexes today. The foot proprioceptor, so that was just rubbing on the bottom of the foot out in all directions, nice and firmly, waking up those foot proprioceptors. When we stand on our feet, we're telling our body that 600 muscles should switch on. When we twist and lengthen our toes, we're waking up our neck and our brain and different parts of the brain. So we're sort of doing so much when we do those foot proprioceptors that we looked at yesterday. The good old emotional stress release points. They can't be overstated how beneficial they can do. When we're in stress, it brings blood to the frontal cortex. Really simple, easy thing. You know, you can whack it on your kids, not whack it, but you know, you can do it on your kids when they're feeling stressed. When your kids are feeling stressed, you can put the hand on the forehead and run that central meridian zip up. So you're increasing the brain conscious energy, because when kids are sick, their little body goes into survival. You know, this is why we get these symptoms we get, because our body starts being fearful of being unwell. It gets fearful of being sick. It gets fearful of doctors. It gets fearful of hospitals. So our body just goes into this turmoil with these things. The postural stress release, that is when we have a pain and we activate the pain a little bit, and then we hold the emotional stress release points. And little bit by little bit, that pain can start to dissipate. Holding the hands on the front of the rear in the brain, in the same way that our Moro reflexes recreates new pathways in the brain, so does this. If we're sitting there and we're thinking about a trauma or a stress, this helps to build new pathways so that our brain can de-stress about something. I always talk about kinesiology as there being a charge. Is there a charge about something? Do we get upset about it? Do we get angry about it? Even if it happened 6 months ago, 3 years ago, 20 years ago. If there's a charge, our brain is holding on to a pattern about it. If our brain is holding on to a pattern about it, it's going to be affecting us in other ways. So this is why I love kinesiology balancing, you know, because it starts dissipating that energy so that we can think clearly and consciously and truly be in the now. Because if we're still acting like when we were at 2 years old, we're not acting in the now. And some of us, you know, we fly off the handle, we go into a rage, we get stressed and tearful at the drop of a hat. Quite often, it's not about what's going on now. It's about what happened in the past. Yeah, the little ear unfurling. Yeah, it's sort of funny. You have feedback with that, a few people, because I really quite like it, because it really helps to open up the brain so that you're hearing and comprehending. There's these little areas in the brain. I mean, I suppose you could just pulse them. I've never actually done that, to be quite honest. But there's 3 over the ears, since a few of you have got littlies. This one here, so we're above the ear, just on the hairline in front of the ear, 2 fingers each side. That little spot is called the broker's reflex point. Now, the broker's point is about the words that come out of our mouth and the physicality of our jaw, the physicality of our mouth. So it's not so much about the context of the words that come out of our mouth, but it's connecting. So, you know, some people mumble. You know, they're not doing it. And you're just thinking, open your mouth. There's no connection to them between the words and the actual physicality of their jaw. So that's the broker's reflex. Behind that, about 1 inch, is the Wernicke's area. Now, the Wernicke's area is it's the thoughts behind the words. So the thoughts behind the words are how often are we in a conversation, and when we're stressed, we've got less of a filter. So, or you hear kids, and kids can say the most darndest things, and you think, man, that came out of left field. So it's sort of like the Wernicke's area is also about the thoughts, both the tone of the thoughts behind the words. So are we able to keep our cool while saying something? And I know for me personally, if I'm passionate about something, sometimes I find it very hard to hold my temper. So I remember years ago, I was in a speaking club for about 20 years. And throughout that time, luckily, I knew the more passionate I was about a subject when I was doing a speech, the more shaky and nervous I would be. And then I was on the radio for 10 years, probably doubling up in that time on 2 different radio stations. And because of the audiences, I really had to learn what I could not say because of the audiences. And then you get really good at suppressing. No, it's not that. It's changing the way that you're about to say something as it's coming out so that it suits the audience. So I got very good at it with 10 years on radio. And in the last couple of years, my filters have gone. No, they're a little bit gone. They're still there a bit, but it's been a very interesting trial again, because I have found, because, you know, I've been a naturopath for 28 years. So, for example, when no one was saying get out in the sunshine and boost your immunity, you know, it's going to help you, you know, it was like crazy. And I knew people who were putting on, you know what, and they were getting anxiety, panic attacks, and getting migraines, and not being able to breathe, and getting asthma, and getting cold sores, and getting, you know, really bad mouth ulcers. Like, this was happening right from the start. So I was like, what the hell is going? Anyway, so many rabbit holes later, here I am. So yeah, so that's my Wernicke. See, I went off on a tangent. So we've got the Broca's area, we've got the Wernicke's area. The one straight above the ear is the auditory integration point. So by doing this, we're sort of in a roundabout way connecting to that auditory integration point. But another thing that we could potentially do is just put a finger on each of those points and wait until they pulse. Because that is going to be, because what the same with this brings blood to the frontal cortex. If we are holding those little points, then it's going to help us to bring the blood to that part of the brain, which is very much about these integration areas. So just a little extra thing. The ear labyrinthine reflex spots. We talked about these ones yesterday. So they're at the base of the skull, these little ones here. So there's like a little notch. Where's my skull? So there's a little notch here and here at the base of the skull. So when you feel that little notch and you rub it, that's the one that's helping to balance your head on your neck, on your shoulders. So that's really cool. It's a nice little one to keep up your, especially for people when they've got headaches and things, because it feels so nice to be rubbing that point and just gently moving your head, you know, so that we're just getting that blood supply in there. So that's the labyrinthine reflex points. Now, the brain buttons, I think, is where we're up to today. I think I mentioned them really briefly, but I've got some. And then the celestial circuit connection, which I've also got a picture for, and eye pathways. So let's go and have a look at my next slide. So this one I wanted to point out. I don't know if you've seen charts like this before, but this just is again how much we're affecting when we're just doing our little ear furling and when we're rubbing on the foot proprioceptors. Now, obviously, the reflexology one, reflexology is not done the way we're doing the foot proprioceptors with that really firm movement going out in all directions. But look how much we're affecting there. So you can imagine doing those two things affects everywhere in the body. Imagine being able to do that just to help to pick things up. And in my Kinesiology Foundations course, one day we were talking about this process called the Brazilian toe massage, which I learned in a remedial massage class, like, 30 years ago. And basically what it's doing is holding the foot. Now let me have a look at the point. So on the feet, see the little solar plexus point in sort of, can you see the solar plexus point? It's a little yellow circle about 2/3 of the way up the foot. So that is also kidney 1. So the kidney 1 point, you hold on to the kidney just gently with your thumbs. You put your thumb on the kidney 1 point. Then you put 2 fingers on the top of the toes and you hold it for 3 minutes. And then at some point, the toe may either kick you off or you go to the next toe in 3 minutes. Now, this Brazilian toe massage is one of the main treatments that's done in a hospital down in Mexico, because they know it shifts the energy, it shifts the meridians, it shifts the energy through the body. So once again, if someone likes their foot done, you know, when you've got time and and they don't, everything's sore and they're just not up for anything big, that will shift energy through their body. The kidney 1 point, that solar plexus point, it is also the first point of the kidney meridian, which is the end of it is here. That's kidney 27. And once again, you can sort of touch the bottom of the foot and then touch these, and that will get the energy flowing through the kidney meridian. Kidney is to do with fear and anxiety. It's internalized fear and anxiety, actually. So kidneys are huge. But have a look at that ear reflexology chart. Like, who knew there were so many connections in the ear? Isn't that a great little chart? Mm. And then with the celestial circuit that we chatted about on day one. So the celestial circuit is that connection between our central and governing meridians. They relate to our conscious and our unconscious pathways in the brain. So when they are jammed by stress or trauma or survival patterns, most of the time, we get locked into survival stuff. So the survival pathway runs from the tailbone, up the spine, up over the head, and starts going in the roof of the mouth. Then on the inside of the body, that governing meridian, that unconscious meridian, is supposed to go down to the central one, and then it comes up again. So there's like this little figure 8 energy that's happening all the time with our energy. So it's like this little small universe going on. It's a bit different to that, the way that the celestial circuit is, because I couldn't find a picture of it. My brother's an artist. I'll have to get him to do me one just for fun. So, but the dantian, the lower dantian that's mentioned there, that's that point 2 inches below the belly button. So 2 inches below the belly button, if we hold that there, at the same time we have our tongue on the roof of the mouth and put our hands over the base chakra or the pubic bone, will also help to try to bring our center of gravity back in at the same time. So that can be an incredibly powerful little trio of things to do. The tongue on the roof of the mouth, holding the hand over the base chakra or over the pubic bone, as well as just touching that dantian, 2 inches below the belly button. Haha. Yeah. So if anyone's interested, obviously, I would love to have a chat with you online and see if. So the Moro reflex that we were talking about yesterday. So this is what babies look like in the midst of a Moro exercise. So basically, it's that thing that they do that's the Moro. So, when there's a loud noise and a baby's face goes red, they scream, and that's the position they get into. And the reason they do it is for survival. They do it so that as a parent, we know exactly what we need to do. Their little brain is going, Mom, come and get me, I'm starving. I had a little, one of my little nephews when he was a baby. God, he's 22 now. But he was someone who one day, Chewy had not, startle reflex, slightly different. There's a smaller window with the startle reflex. It's, I think on a chart coming up, I've got where that is in the hierarchy, but thank you. So this little cousin, he was pretty tiny, and it was in the middle of winter. So his mum was spot washing him, and he had screamed for like 12 hours straight. And so finally she thought, I'll give him a cool bath. I'll give him a warm bath, a tepid bath, and just see if that calms him down. So she got him undressed. And because she hadn't fully undressed him because it was so freezing that winter, she found a little hair curled around his toe. So he had been screaming at her. His Moro reflex had been saying, Mum, my toe's going to bloody well fall off. And because she'd been doing everything, she'd been sort of trying to find out, she'd been feeding him and, changing him and all sorts of things. But it wasn't until she took his onesie off that she saw what was going on. And then it took a while because it was actually quite damaged. So always pay attention to your babies. What a surprise. But yeah, I thought they were quite good little pictures of those Moro reflexes. So then I was sort of...
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
With babies, like my granddaughter, when she gets excited, she's got her arms out like that the whole time, like especially when her mum's feeding her, her arms go out straight. Is that
Interesting.
the same thing?
Well, not really, because that would be a contentment sort of thing. That could be a lack of startle reflex or a lack of Moro reflex, actually.
Yeah, because she was cesarean born, so
Oh,
that was
interesting.
surprising.
So, there's actually quite a bell curve of the Moro reflex. So with cesarean kids, once again, sometimes they've never fully activated the Moro. So
Yeah.
something may or may not happen. Some kids will be beautiful and perfect their whole life, and that's awesome too. But sometimes if we've only built up a little bit of our Moro reflex and it's not fully, hit that curve because of an early C-section or because of something that's happened, then basically at some stage, if they have a trauma or a stress or a change in hormones, they might hit that bell curve and their life will be really traumatic for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
But hopefully that's all good. Hopefully that's all good. I love happy, healthy babies. That's awesome. Oh, why is this not moving? Oh, okay. So these were things that I was having a look at this morning. Oh, does that actually say click to add text there? Goodness me. Okay, sorry about that one. So, but it's because it affects the physical state of a child, it's not just physical stuff, because yes, it can make you have weak abdominals. There's these, going back about 10 years ago, there was a time when all these kids were having these relaxed muscle syndromes where they just had like almost like their neurology just wasn't connecting to their muscles in their body, and they didn't have the ability to get up and about. And at the time, I was going through a lot of training with LEAP, and we were sort of looking, where can our, where in the brain is this sort of going on? But we know that the Moro reflex can affect that. So the emotional resilience can express as anxiety and ODD. Has anyone ever met someone with ODD, oppositional defiance disorder? Oh, yeah. It's like these poor little kids just find a challenge with absolutely any authority. It's like they've got zero boundary for being told what to do. The barrier, sorry, they just don't have the ability to deal with things. And I had a client years ago. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm sure teachers are seeing it all the time these days. One of my young lads a long time ago, actually, he's 32 now. He happens to be my son's age. And he was about 10 when he was seeing me, and his dad was a cop and his mum was, she had all sorts of stuff going on, but she didn't have a filter when she was talking about him to me. So she would come in wanting him to be treated, but would call him every name under the sun. And I would and then she, after a while, I had to say to her, do you want to take your other kid down to the park? I've got a park 2 doors down, so she'd disappear for an hour. And I was like, oh, thank gosh, because he was perfect with me. And it made no sense to her why he was perfect with me and he was such a little shit to her. And I could sort of see why, but you can't say that. So it was sort of very interesting. And the cop is a dad. They're dealing with that sort of level of, two really strong human beings in the household. And this kid has ended up being the most adorable human being. Like he just ended up finding his way and he's fine. But he was diagnosed ODD. But as soon as he was away from his parents, he was so much better. There was always left over by the time he got to school because it was just so traumatic every night. He was also someone, by the way, when he clenched his jaw. So that the jaw is very much about, it's not only about strength, but it's about planting us on the planet. It is about trauma and stress. So, you'll often see people who, when they're stressed, they sort of have that little jaw, clenching over and over again. And so when our jaw is really tight, but he clenched his jaw so tight overnight that 2 rooms away, his parents could still hear him clenching his jaw. So that was one of the things we were working with him, because I know that the right jaw associated with stress and the left jaw is associated with defensiveness. So you got this defensive stress jaw in your sleep saying to the universe, yeah, I'm stressed and I got to be defensive. This is my life. Anyway, I'm very grateful to know that he's a gorgeous human being these days. We did a lot of work. But yeah, so with the sensory processing, it can lead to diagnosis of ASD and all of that spectrum. The nervous system is hypervigilant in order to protect us. We've got to remember our body is doing the best it can at the time. Like everything that goes on in our body, it's trying to protect us. So the Moro reflex is about crawling out that birth canal, and secondly, about letting mum and dad know we need something. We need something. We don't want a hair about to let our little toe fall off. Yeah, and then because it really helps to integrate, part of the Moro reflex is integrating our vestibular system, which is our balance mechanisms, our visuals, our oculomotor function. And if any of those are out of balance, we're looking at ADHD, dyslexia, learning disabilities, and the whole spectrum ASD. So quite often people with retained Moro reflexes are hypervigilant in all of their senses. What are they seeing? What are they feeling? What are they hearing? And how they act. They don't like things being out of their control. And I found this little picture this morning as well, which I thought was adorable. So the palmar reflex, again, it's about keeping babies safe. But how often does a little baby grab you and it's the first thing they do out of the womb? Just melts your little heart. You go, oh my God, look at that. So the palmar reflex was the one. I'll show you the actual test for it. So you actually use the bottom of the feet. So, and you rub a pen. You just get like a pen or a pencil or something, and you go up the foot. And if the toes curl, you've got a retained. Oh, so if you can't stand that and you want to scratch it immediately, that's an abnormal plantar reflex. But we do the same thing with the hands and the feet. So it's about that extension and flexion. So about 3 to 5 seconds with your toes and your fingers, and then about 3 to 5 seconds with your toes and your fingers. And that helps to normalize the plantar response. But yeah, if your little toes just go crazy, yeah, it's a bit of a sign. And the other one I mentioned yesterday was the spinal galant reflex. So you get someone on their little hands and knees, and once again, you just use a bit of a pen, you come down the thing, and if the butt muscles go off to the side, that's a sign that we've got a retained plantar spinal galant reflex. And the great thing is it's an easy thing to fix. So you get someone to do the snow angels about 15 times, just lying on their back, sort of do that 15 times a day. And it starts helping to unravel that spinal galant that can be locked, because this is the one where kids might hate tags in their underwear. They might hate fabric on their lower back. They might choose to wear big baggy things all the time. They might be bedwetters. They might be someone who can't sit still in the classroom because they don't have enough energy going up and down their spine. It's jammed. And they do everything they can to avoid things touching their back. The old ants in the pants. I always think ants in the pants, spinal galants. But here is a bunch of them. So the Moro reflex, reactive and sensitive, common in ADHD. The juvenile suck and rooting reflex can lead to kids having speech, articulation, and dental problems. Remember, we were talking about the roof of the mouth yesterday, how high that roof of the mouth is. So the higher the roof of the mouth, the more likely we are to have sinus issues. So this is just another little, and that's the sort of when we touch there and someone wants to rub it. I've got a friend and she's often a surrogate for me on my kinesiology balances on YouTube. And whenever I touch hers there, she shuts her eyes as I'm coming in, and then she sort of has to rub it because it's still so sensitive. She was breastfed for a few months, but sometimes if we haven't been breastfed long enough, then that just stays there. And throughout life, energetically, what we're trying to do, we're trying to work towards what we need, like we're rooting around trying to find the thing in life that's going to make us happy, healthy, and well. The palmar reflex. So what it can lead to is jumbling up letters, poor writing expression and spelling, slouching at the desk and computer. You wouldn't think that would have that much to do with that, would you? But all of these are supposed to happen at really specific intervals when we're born. The spinal galant reflex, trouble sitting still and poor bladder control. The asymmetrical tonic neck writing reflex. I definitely have this one. This is the one where you can write upside down, just as neat and tidy as writing it up. So your sort of body, you know, can sort of do anything in a weird direction. I always thought that was great. In the old days when you had to sign for your credit card stuff, and I'd be at the checkout and there'd be a tiny little spot on the top of their little machine. I just whack it up and do it upside down. I think, yep, that was as neat as it was if I was able to do it the other way up. But it can also lead to, being easily distracted, poor coordination and messy handwriting. The fear paralysis reflex. I think this one, Cody, is very much like the startle reflex, you know, feeling withdrawn and shy and tantrums and anxiety. So you know how some people get paralysis when they are stressed, so they can't speak, they can't, you know, they sort of get into that space, they can't protect themselves. There was a study done on the freeze reef. It wasn't a study, it was probably David Attenborough or something just talking about it. But they were looking at zebras and lions in the wild. And they showed this phenomenon that would happen where the zebra who'd been targeted by the lionesses, they would actually like freeze when the lioness pounced. So normally the lioness would go for the, you know, the intestines or something, rip it out and leave them to, you know, start festering. But when at the moment of the attack, the zebra would actually freeze. So it would basically collapse, and it wasn't pretending because it's an animal. So it would freeze and collapse. The lioness would assume it was dead. So the lioness would go off to get the pride or the dad or whatever the hell she was doing. And then the zebra, within a minute or so, was able to get up, run away. But then there would be such trauma to the nervous system of that the zebra, that it would take about 3 days for the zebra to fully recover. Like, how cool is that? Like, you know, like, we're just big animals too. So it's amazing that, you know, that was something that was observed. And that makes so much sense for some people in freeze mode, you know, who can't speak their truth, who can't stand up for themselves, who feel like they just have all this stuff happening to them all the time. They're often in freeze. And it's, you know, and once again, that's a survival mechanism. If you grew up with someone who beat the crap out of you every time you spoke up, you're not going to be that person who speaks up throughout your life unless you have a lot of, you know, willpower and training and stuff going on. So I think we covered this on day one, but I'll sort of just mention them again. Because once again, these ones are ones that we can do. Actually, I'll make me bigger. So left, right, up, down, front, back. Oops. Because I think these ones are ones that everyone on the planet, you know, everyone would be a happier, healthier human being. Actually, that's... Oh, screw, you know, we've moved everything on this computer in the last 24 hours. So the left, right ones are these little spots under the collarbone. So holding the navel and rubbing those left and right spots under the collarbone. So that helps to connect the left and right sides of the brain. And then swap hands and do it again. The reason we do that is that underneath, basically at the base of the skull, there's a whole bunch of nerves that cross over here. So that's why when someone has a stroke, if they have a stroke on this side of the body, the other side of the body is affected. So that's why when we're doing some kinesiology, things like these switching points, we want to actually swap them over. So we do left and right sides of the brain, and then we swap the hands over and we do it again. So that is helping to connect the left and right. The next one is top and bottom. So this one, your hand on the navel and you're rubbing top and bottom of your lips. So because the bottom encases things like the top of your spinal cord, it's sort of where a lot of our survival mechanisms are. The top's a lot of problem solving. So, so when we're doing this one, we're sort of once again allowing our body to go into calm the survival stuff and allow us to problem solve. And then the third one is once again, hand on the navel and rubbing the tailbone. So this is about front back switching. So people who can't look over there or look in a mirror and do reverse parking, that's a classic one for this one. So because the brain has a hard time looking at something and reversing it. And all of these things can be messing up with little kids. So when kids are getting their D's and their B's and their P's and their Q's mixed up, that can be left-right switching. When we've got... So basically doing these can really help our brain to function a bit better. It's very, very cool. One of my aunts, she was a teacher for 30 years at a kindy, and she was quite amazing at integrating this sort of thing into her kindy, and the local schools knew that the kindy kids that came from her school into their primary schools, they knew that those ones integrated so much better because their brains were working better. And so much happens that can really mess with our little brains early on these days.
Can I ask again?
Yeah, please.
Do you do that with the kids, like those little exercises?
Oh, you just get them to do it. They love copying. How old are you talking?
Oh, she's only nearly 1 at the moment.
Okay, no. So absolutely, you can just hold her belly button and rub those little spots.
Yeah, beautiful.
Just hold the belly button. Yeah, give a little tail, little butt, a little bit of a wiggle. She'll think it's funny.
Yes.
And same with running that central meridian. Like my grandson Teddy, I'm surprised I'd never done it before. Like really, in the last 3 months is the first time I've ever done kinesiology on him, and he's loving it. And I think I've said before, he actually says, "Let's talk to the people, grandmum." So he knows he's going to be videoed on YouTube. So I think he's he's going to like it. I don't know. Or he'll hate it, one of the two. Who knows? So yeah, so that's the little how to. But see, my little pro tip bottom right is anti-clockwise over the heart. Actually does all three simultaneously. But down the track, when we're actually muscle testing, you can muscle test left, right, up, down, front, back, because that gives us more information. But within my balances all day, every day, I do anti-clockwise over the heart all the time. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm doing immune system stuff, whether I'm doing structural stuff, I just put it in there all the time, because just about everything that happens to our body, there's a stress there. So it doesn't matter if it's a whiplash from, falling out of a tree, which was lots of fun. It's sort of like, darn, I'm going to get in trouble because I tore my shorts and I did this and now I've got to go home and I'm, might have to go to the chiro. Mum's going to have to spend money on me. All of this stuff goes through our brains in a heartbeat, and it can all log in there as a little bit of trauma. Actually, there's a funny story about derby car drivers over in America. So there's a story about whiplash and how it is so much worse in a regular human being who has a car accident. Takes about 2 years on average for a whiplash to resolve itself. 2 years. How crazy is that? Whereas in America, when it was an American study, they were looking at derby car drivers. So, these people do it for fun. They crash for fun all the time. On average, they have over 20 accidents per year. They never suffer whiplash, because the expectation is totally different when it's, when it's fun and it's your job and it's your life and, that's what it's supposed to do. So there is no stress when you crash. That's the job. What a different mentality that is. It's a whole thing with no consequences. What a concept. Anyway. So yeah, tapping anti-clockwise over the heart does all three. Yeah, so then I came across, because I've done a lot of research over the years, and I'm sure you guys have all heard the sort of things, that breathing, prayer, meditation, they all do very, very similar things with our nervous systems. all do very, very similar things. So, and they've actually done studies on, say, prayer, for example, where if someone prays in one house, the energy actually expands. If you have several people praying in one house, it expands even further. So it ends up increasing the happiness of more people around us when we're doing something with prayer and gratitude and forgiveness and stuff like this. What a phenomenal, how phenomenal is that? Like, to me, that's just an amazing thing. And that's the whole thing, I think, as kinesiologists, as we sort our shit out, you know, and improve our lives and improve the lives of people around us, it makes a really big difference. The heart healing, which I'm sort of hoping most of that will be in my signature system. When I learned that, one of the things was that one uses this thing called the map of consciousness. And the map of consciousness is, there was over 1 million muscle tests done. It might have been 2 million muscle tests done over 20 years by a guy who wrote a book about it. And basically what he was doing, he tested people of all different walks of life from all over the planet, and he came up with a specific frequency. I think I might have mentioned this Monday. But basically the frequencies of things like shame are 20 and guilt is 30. But to be stable, we're around 200 or 220. But then everything else like forgiveness and gratitude and love and enlightenment are all much higher than that. So there's been a lot of, once again, they're doing research on such interesting things. So there was a study done with people at end of life, and these were atheists running the study. And they basically got this meter. So they had this meter, so they had these people hooked up, and their general meter of energy, whether they were in the positive with happiness or the negative with being cranky butts. Okay, I've forgotten the numbers now. Sorry about that. But basically, whatever it was, the general level was here and the general level was here with positive or negative. But in the few minutes before death, one of them had a friend of theirs pray for them, and her number went way the hell up. It had not been there all the time this guy had been doing the research with her. The other guy, the cranky butt, they had his stuff in just towards his death. He got really angry at one of the nurses, and his numbers went all the way down to an equivalent of the positive, but in the negative. And they stayed there until death. So this guy then started looking at the frequencies of things like forgiveness. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll ask you to share that in a moment, Cody, if you're happy to. So basically what he ended up doing was then, because forgiveness and gratitude have got such high frequencies, they found that people who do forgiveness before bed and gratitude on rising, it helps to basically cleanse their brain of old, awful stuff. So, and you have to mean it, of course, but, you know, and always remember, forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about us. Forgiveness is about letting it go and being able to move on. Are you happy to share that little story, Cody?
Yeah, just so in my kinesiology session today, I had it tested up what number I'm sitting at in the frequency. And so like, yeah, you've got it was around 200, like you said, like for below and above. And I'm sitting at 350, which is your acceptance level, forgiveness.
So that was after the balance, you got up to 350.
Well, not necessarily. It was just during it. We came up about finding out where I am in comparison to where like my partner is and where we sit, and we sort of dived into relationship stuff today.
Yeah.
So I think it was more where I generally sit energetically is about 350.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And do you practice, can I just ask, do you practice a lot of prayer or breath or meditation or forgiveness?
Yeah, I definitely pray pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And I use breath a lot when it comes to my children and parenting. And so I take a few deep breaths if I get find I'm being tested a lot or frustrated by what there is, or
gorgeous. Yeah.
and then I take a few breaths and then I'll come back to it. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's great. Yeah, so basically what they've found is that these things increase energy, they improve your sleep, they reduce your stress, improve focus and concentration, increase your willpower, enhance your immune system. How bizarre is that? And then imagine rubbing your brain buttons as well, you know, while thinking of something, while working with something, so that your brain is getting more left-right integration, so more logical and creative enhancement for whatever issue you're doing, or getting more you know, linking into that survival stuff so that it's being tweaked, so that it can disappear faster. And the front back of the brain, the rear of the brain, this is where our visual centers are, right here. So when we're seeing something and we don't have our visual centers, the front back of the brain connecting, so that's the tailbone and the belly button, then we're not integrating what we've seen. And how many images do we see all day, every day these days? You know, people who are on social media all the time are getting so much data that is often not adding to their lives, by the way. You know, so it can be one of these things we really need to take a close look at what we're doing. And that's without even thinking about all the EMF stuff. I might even chat about that a little bit tomorrow because it's just such a big thing these days. Breathing exercises are like body exercises. You don't have to like it, you just have to do it. Yeah, it's and so one of my guys was telling me this morning that he's aware that he regularly stops breathing. Just in the day-to-day, you know, he'll find himself and he's not breathing. And I've got him doing Wim Hof breathing techniques, and that's sort of helping him. But when he gets down, he forgets all the good stuff. So isn't it amazing? He had a guy, he lives somewhere, and basically someone came over and abused him recently. The guy was drunk and was saying all sorts of crap, but he spent 24 hours feeling so down on himself that he didn't eat well. He didn't have his apple cider vinegar and water. He didn't have his Celtic salt. He didn't have his greens and his veggies. He didn't have his good quality proteins. You know, and he said that he unconsciously went into a bakery and bought a bee sting. He said he just doesn't do that when he's feeling good. You know, and he's trying to be conscious. He's consciously trying to get rid of his chronic fatigue and things like that. But he could feel how quickly he felt bad. His shame lowered his energy so much, he had no conscious thinking. Just gone. You know, because this guy abused him. So breathing helps to balance our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. So when these two systems work beautifully in harmony, this is when we digest well. This is when we breathe well. This is when our immune system's working well and we sleep well and we wake up feeling great. So the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, you know, we need them both up and running. Our sympathetic one, we want to switch on when we need to run away from that tiger. But we don't want them both activated all the time. We need them to swings and roundabouts with what we need at any time of the day and night. The more we do breathing exercises, the more we come into this space of being able to go back into peace and calm. Is that what you find, Cody, with your prayer every day and your breathing exercises? It's easier to get there?
Yeah, definitely. I want to add on the breathing. I had a thought that, you know, I used to be very hugely on just only mouth breathing, and I never was able to breathe through my nose. Like I've got a high palate and there's like, you know, physical structural aspects to it all, but you know, over the last few years, finding out the importance of really having to breathe through my nose after becoming a parent, like, and through learning about the oral restrictions and ties with my kids, I've retaught myself to actually just breathe through my nose in and out through my mouth. But sometimes if I try to talk too fast, I forget to breathe through my nose while I'm talking, and it sort of just comes out my mouth. But yeah, definitely breathing helps with all of that. Sure, I've come a long way.
Thank you. And I think I told this story the other day, but I'll say it again. The parasympathetic nervous system and the power of the mind with pain is huge as well. There's been some study in the last few years that show that up to 98% of pain can be controlled if we can control our mind. Like, how amazing is that? So there's a particular researcher whose name I can't recall, but he spoke at a seminar I was at last year, and he was a psychiatrist, and he used to see people for chronic pain and all sorts of things. And he sort of started thinking, well, why is this not getting resolved? Why are they on all these painkillers and nothing is changing? So, of course, the doctors just assume it's in your head and they send you off to the shrink. But this guy actually did some cool research. And what he did was found that when he talked people through their pain, that and sort of got them breathing with it and imagining having no pain and going through this process of visualizing the body in no pain, doing the action that causes them pain, but breathing through the process. And bit by bit, they would get less and less and less and less pain. In fact, the two examples he gave of exactly how the brain can control it. And once again, I know I share this story lots, but I love it. So it's two guys from workers' sites. One of them, so this guy was on his own in a building site, and one of those big long nails went straight through his hand, straight through. And there's an x-ray of it, and it's probably online everywhere because it's a bit of a story. So he had no pain. He had to drive himself to the hospital. The second he was at the hospital where people could take care of him, the pain appeared and he needed drugs and all sorts of things. So he was being taken care of. It was survival patterns. It was survival stuff that kept him okay. He was conscious, he was lucid, he was able to drive. You know, it was a bit crap having a big nail through your hand, but it wasn't until he actually got there and then the pain kicked in. Person number two, wearing huge boots on a worker site, I think this was in Canada, jumped off a building, a nail went straight up through his toes. So he was in 100% pain. So he got to the hospital, everyone's helping him out. They get him to the hospital, they cut the boot off him, and the nail had actually gone through his toes, between them. It had not touched them. And yet they didn't even know that because he was in so much pain. His brain told him he was in pain. So how is that for two totally opposite but cool stories in relation to pain? And yeah, I know people have been to pain clinics too, thank you, and thought it was no help. Medically, they just don't have a lot of solutions. You know, if they're not working with our pain receptors, you know, we have so much more up our sleeve, I believe, in the Kinesiology and natural therapies world, which I'm very, very grateful for. So remember we looked at this one on day one. Where are you all feeling now? I'm sort of hoping that I've been getting you more excited about it, and you're sort of feeling somewhere in there where you go, I want more, I want more, I want more. Anyway, so it's sort of like one of those things that, once again, if you want to book on a call with me and have a chat and see whether working with me is for you, I just love kinesiology coaching. It's I'm so grateful that I have allowed myself to open myself up to technology. 3 years ago, I had not done a single etheric balance. I think it might even be close to 3 years. Maybe 3 years is August. I had never done an etheric balance, and about a year and a half before that, I was at a Charles Krebs course, and everyone was talking about how energy is energy is energy. You don't need a body. You know, like Joanne was saying earlier on, you know, we know that energetically we have so much ability to work on people. And a lot of practitioners never work on the body itself. You know, they only do energetic work. I like the combination. I like it. I like feeling the body change as I'm working. I like seeing what is physically happening in someone's body if I'm moving their feet and their legs and their head and their neck. You know, so I like that interaction. I know a lot of people don't because they don't want, you know, it's not them, and that's fine. But, where was my story? Oh, so the etheric balances. So I was at this course, and this woman said to me, she said, you know exactly what to do. She said, you've been doing this for so long, you can put an etheric body on your table. But no one else had ever done that. I'd never seen anyone do that, is what I meant to say there. So when I started doing it, I did not look at anyone else. People were teaching kinesiology by distance at the beginning of COVID. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do it anyone else's way. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it in a way that makes sense to me, where I can double check myself so that I know that things are a yes or a no. And so I went into my weird little way of doing my etheric balancing. And now I quite love it. It's hard work. I much prefer working on a real human being, because it's easier. It's easier for me to work on a real human being. I have to think way too hard with the etheric stuff, but I do love it nonetheless now that I've got some skill in it. So yeah. So once again, if you are looking for something more and you think kinesiology is the sort of thing you might want to add to your world, book in a coaching call with me. This is our first step, the Kickstarting Kinesiology. The second round is my Kinesiology Foundations. It's a 7-week program, 2 classes per week, lots of time to practice in there. And then my Practitioner Excellence is going to start next year. So that's 15 months and lots and lots and lots and lots in there. Haven't quite worked out the format of that yet, but I'm getting there. But yeah, so I will. So yeah, so hop on there and get all your sort of your favorite learning for today. If you haven't done your introduction video, get that on there. If you've got someone, like your little, whoever the little human beings you've got to practice on babies. Babies are so much fun. And once again, I am blown away that I had not worked on Teddy until recently. I don't know, must have been something going on there. Maybe I didn't think he'd be bright enough to do it or something. But as soon as I did, I went, oh, gosh, why didn't I do this? But anyway, so think about thank you, Cody, absolutely. So we'll book in a call and, get started. The next one starts in August, my next Kinesiology Foundations. For you, of course, Joanne, you'll be in there next time as well. So yay. Have you practiced some stuff from Foundations yet, Joanne?
Yeah, look, a little bit, but just not confident with it. Do need to practice a whole lot more.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I was chatting to a lady from Germany who may or may not be watching these calls, and she was saying that she loves the kinesiology. Her family doesn't want a bar of it. She doesn't have friends who want a bar of it. And I think, why wouldn't you say yes if someone said, hey, I'm practicing this healing tool? Can I practice? Yeah. Like, it seems like such a bizarre thing to not have people saying, pick me.
One of the things I'm really comfortable with is the hand method you were showing before. With your hand. Sorry, I'm holding the screen so I can't do it. To get the lock or unlock response, and choosing. I've worked with fluorescences a lot. So right. That. Yeah, I'm really confident with that side of it. So I know the lock and the unlock works, but yes, just got to put it all together so I can sort of work on the whole person.
And I can't remember whether it was the first, second, or the third class where I really went into the first, second, or third layers of stress. Might have been after that.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one.
Okay, so I might actually mention that now. So for those of you who have had really good kinesiologists, this isn't an issue. But sometimes practitioners don't actually know when a lock is a lock is a lock. So if you're working with someone and there is a lock, that can be either first stage stress, which is a lock. No, sorry. It can be either a lock which is balanced, or it can be a second stage stress, which is a hyperfacilitation. So if someone isn't, so if you're doing the push to mush and it's not unlocking, so it's staying, push to mush, push to mush, push to mush, that's a sign that muscle is hyperfacilitated. So you can be high. So there's so much energy in there. Once again, that's about survival. Why does the body get so tight that it can't lock and unlock when it's asked to? That's about survival. Imagine what happens when our little nervous system, is in fight. We, feel it in your body when we're in fight. Our whole body gets activated. Like it's a whole body experience being human. So when we're looking at things like scoliosis, just something I prepared earlier. So when we've got a curvature of the spine, what that is doing, that is your body being permanently in fight or flight. So your body is curving energetically, and the chiros are trying to straighten up, and the doctors want to rip out your spinous process and whack in a rod in there. But when we've got a scoliosis, that is a fight and flight response. If we don't take out that fight and flight response, you're never going to get that beautiful straight spine. One of my friends, Amanda, she was a client at the time and nearly 30 years ago, and I just learnt NOT, neuro organizational technique. And I think she might have been the first person that I ever did 4 hours of NOT on. But she had a spine. I can't remember, but I think it was nearly a 30% curvature in her spine. And so I literally started at the beginning and I worked my way through the book. And we got it down to a 2% or 3% or something like that. And she had already spent 2 years avoiding an operation because the doctor had told her that she would be having, because she was getting close to the lungs not working. With a scoliosis, you've got all this twisting going on. It puts pressure on organs. So it's a major thing. Now, when he had said to her, either we do the operation or you swim 2 kilometers per day. And he'd never had anyone actually do that when they'd been told to before. So she started swimming 2 kilometers per day, and it stabilized it and it brought it back to, I don't think it was under 20%, but it did start bringing it back really, really slowly, with all of that activity. But it wasn't until we got in there and we started changing that structure and that survival stuff in underneath that scoliosis that it went back to, I think it was 3%, might have been 2%, but that was amazing. So that's why she became a naturopath kinesiologist. So that was really nice. So beautiful, Cody. Yeah, we'll chat afterwards and I'll book in a discovery call with you. Thank you. And hope you all enjoy that. Get onto the Kickstarting Kinesiology group and tell us what you liked today. Oh, what was your favourite thing from today? Do you have any favourites?
The Brazilian foot. Learning that, I'm going to give it a go.
Which one? The Brazilian. Yeah.
So when I do the 2 fingers, is that on each toe until I get a pulse?
So, you can imagine that little kidney one at the base of the foot, and then you basically put 2 fingers at the top and 1 finger underneath. And you just wait, and sometimes it literally kicks you off.
Wow.
I mean, it's been 25 years since I've done it on anyone, but I remember the feeling going, oh my God, that actually worked. It was bizarre.
There we go. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's the one I like best as well.
The Brazilian toe massage. That's so fun. I'll have to find some information on it. Yeah.
I'll give it a go as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I found the brain switching interesting because I've actually had a friend ask me recently about her daughter with mixing the letters up and back and front with like her P's, D's and stuff. So I'll be interested to bring that info to her and see what she finds from that. Yeah.
I'll fix up these slides, by the way, as well, and then I'll share them again tomorrow correctly without the boxes. I didn't think the boxes were going to show. Sorry about that. Like I said, I did my first ever one ever on Monday. So, yay. And we didn't glitch today. It all worked.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I had better scoot. Thank you all. Sorry we ran a little bit over time today. So see you tomorrow at 12:15.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.